This is a pre-Chaturanga pose tutorial. We're not actually going to look at the pose itself. What we're going to do is deconstruct a lot of the movements so that even if you never do a Chaturanga in your life, that you are understanding the different elements to make that Chaturanga more sustainable for your body. So by deconstructing it, you're going to learn the mechanics of the shoulders a little bit more, how to create more safety and support around your shoulder joint, and be able to use your shoulder complex more effectively and efficiently. What you'll need is a wall, you'll need a chair, and an open mind and ready to dive in. So let's do that. I'm going to move the chair over to the side for the moment because we're going to start freeform. We're going to start with no props, and the first thing that we're going to do is actually just tune into the shoulders themselves and look at a couple key factors as to what and how your Chaturanga is going to look better in your body. Now, one of the main things that many of us will do in a Chaturanga pose is pull the shoulder blades together. Whether we think of that or not, that's something that's a default once we put the load of our bodies on our hands and knees. So first, let's learn and put the pattern into our brain of moving your scapula so that you can know how to widen, to separate that default squeezing together that we may do in a Chaturanga or plank position. So all we need to do with that is simply let the shoulder blades squeeze together and then widen apart. Shoulder blades squeeze together and widen apart. It's such a simple movement that we might actually overlook it, and we may not put as much value on it because, what do you mean? I can easily squeeze my shoulders and shoulder blades like this. But it's a little bit more deceptive than that, because now I'm going to pause on my explanation. We're just going to change the movement slightly. We're going to pull the shoulder blades together, and then we're going to squeeze them together all the way up to your ears, and then you'll bring them wide and down. Shoulder blades squeeze all the way up to the ears, wide and down. Okay, so you're going to keep doing that. And I say this is deceptive because there's a real big difference between just circling your shoulders. So let's do that together for a moment. Let's do a before and after. Circle your shoulder blades, or just your shoulders themselves. Notice how that feels. Shake that out. And then go back to that more active where you just think about your shoulder blades themselves. Shoulder blades squeeze, up, up, up your back, wide and down. And do you notice how that's different? That when you're thinking about inviting the movement just into the shoulder blades, that it requires more effort. Now let's go the other way. The shoulder blades will squeeze together all the way down the back and then wide. Up, squeeze together all the way down. Now, a quick anatomy nugget here. When you are doing this, you can know that you have 17 muscles that attach to your spine or attach to those shoulder blades. And those shoulder blades, when we do this very deceptively simple movement, we're actually moving a lot of parts of us. And so this is a real foundational movement if we want to have strong and sturdy Chaturangas, if we want to have strong and stable downward facing dogs, or even a tabletop position, or even if we just want to have healthy, good, sustainable shoulders. Now let's pause that movement and take a moment and notice how that feels. Good. So that's the first step in our Chaturanga deconstruction is, okay, now we've mapped and moved the shoulder blades so that our brain is going to be more familiar with that movement. Now the next thing that we're going to do is that exact same movement, but we're going to do it at the wall here. And when you're at the wall, you're going to face the wall with the hands like so, just about shoulder height. And once you've got the hands at shoulder height, push the wall away from you. Feel like you're trying to push it away. And then now let your shoulder blades come together. Shoulder blades move apart. We call this the rhomboid push-up, or we call it the scapula push-up. But the key when we do this is that we're not letting the elbows bend, that the movement is just the shoulder blades. And now let's do the whole circle. Now you notice that this is the exact same movement that we did with the arms down by our side, but with the arms up in front of us and having something to push into changes the experience. Let's go the other direction. It changes the load for your shoulders. So now we're actually creating a little bit more muscular effort, which is really important for further down the road if we decide to do movements like Chaturanga. Good. Now relax that. And if you ever and only did those two movements and never did a Chaturanga in your life, you're still going to get so many benefits. So this is a beautifully accessible movement for pretty much everybody. You can do it sitting in a chair, you can do it on an airplane, standing in line at the grocery store. And just know that you are actually mobilizing and moving many parts from your muscles that connect from your scapula up to your neck, shoulders, everything. But let's add the load a little bit. This is what we're doing, is a little bit of a progression, a little bit of a series of kind of the same movement, but making it just a little bit more challenging each way. Now you'll have a chair or you'll have a countertop, something that you can lean onto. And then you determine how far or how much work you want to do here. The further you go, the more plank-like you'll be, which means the more weight that you'll have on the shoulders. So the first couple I recommend taking it a little bit easier, leaning a little bit further onto that chair. Arms will be about shoulder width apart, and then we let the shoulder blades squeeze together, move apart. So now it's the same movement again. But because we're leaning and we have a little bit more body weight holding ourselves up through the arms, it means we're going to do a little bit more work here. And you can go back into those circles. Good. And then go the other way. Remember, keeping the arms strong. I like to think of them like pillars of support that help support the movement of the scapula. Let's do one more circle. Okay, now coming away from that, taking a few moments and noticing how the shoulders feel. Mine feel great already, lighter, a little bit more awake and alive. But now let's think about a little bit more deconstructed of some of the movement now. So we're removing our scapula. Let's think about movement at the glenohumeral joint. Movement at the glenohumeral joint means that you are moving your humerus, your upper arm bone, and at the top of that upper arm bone is a beautiful sphere, and that sphere, the head of your humerus, will glide and in that glenohumeral joint. And that's what we really want to focus on. On a good Chaturanga, the head of the humerus is held well by all the surrounding tissues. And for a lot of people, when things go a little bit off in their Chaturangas, is that the head of the humerus isn't really in a good spot and kind of maybe sometimes will pop out because we haven't built the requisite strength around those tissues. So let's do that here. And this is what I call armpits of power. And armpits of power is a playful way of describing how to build strength around your shoulder joint. I like to think of it like a container of strength around the shoulder joint so that the head of the humerus gets to stay well and held lovingly in the joint here. So while it moves, the arthrokinematics of that joint stay smooth because the tissues are strong enough to support the movement. So let's come back onto the back of the chair or your counter and lean a little bit. And now let's go into the default that a lot of people do if you were tired, right? So can you see what just happened? I let my shoulders pop up. I'm kind of dropping down and feeling the head of the humerus pop up into and up towards the ceiling. And then immediately as we hold that, as we notice that, it's probably not going to feel as comfortable. And you might notice that your shoulder blades are in that retracted position, in that squeezed position I was talking about earlier that wasn't super stable for the shoulder complex. Let's get out of that. So how we do that is push the chair, the countertop away from you. So try that one more time, drop down, and all we're going to do is just push the chair away from us. Good. Now that we've pushed the chair away from us, we'll notice what happened to your shoulder blades. You might notice that your shoulder blades are now a little bit wider. They're not in that retracted position. So that's a very simple start to kicking on, turning on the armpits of power, waking up the strength around the tissues around that glenohumeral joint. Now let's hold that. And maybe if you want to try a little bit more work, walk a little further and hold that. Good. And then let's add a little bit of elbow bend. So we're going to turn the elbows out to the side. So from the front, it's going to look like this. You're going to turn the elbows out to the side and then pull your elbows back in towards your body. So try that one more time. Lean out. It's almost like you're doing a little push-up. And then as you straighten the arms, push that chair away. Externally rotate the arms slightly as you pull and squeeze your elbows toward each other. And what might have happened is that you might have noticed, oh, there's a lot more work going on in the musculature, maybe even around your entire arm, not just around the shoulder. So that's good. There's a big difference between that first one, go back to that if you'd like, and now this one. Okay, now that we have that, I'm going to give you actually one more little cue for that to make super good sense for you. When we go into our next movement. So the next thing, or the same thing that we want to do, you've got that, your arms awake, but another thing to think about, or another cue that might help this make more sense is, see this outer edge of the armpit here? You want to feel like that's wrapping around. Or another way to explain it, because it's helpful to explain the same things in a couple different ways, another way to explain it or think about it is having a little bit of a hole or space in your armpit, so that hollowing out of the armpit is actually what's creating that, remember as we talked about, that container of support, which is really your armpit for your beautiful shoulder joint here. Now, hopefully all of that makes sense. And now let's see if we can hold it as we extend the arms. So we'll go into what is probably for a lot of us quite a familiar movement, right? It's like a little half down, countertop downward dog, sometimes we call it. And for many of us, it's going to be easy. Let your chest drop, especially if you're really hypermobile in the chest. You got to really just let that chest drop to feel a stretch. But if we want to think about the arthrokinematics, the movement of the head of your humerus in its joint, when you went like this, we probably lost some of that container of support because the head of the humerus would have slid down and out of a good, happy, healthy place. So let's externally rotate and then only lean back, reach back as long as you can hold, feel that work. And you may notice all of a sudden the tissues and muscles down your back in the lats, especially latissimus dorsi muscles, start to kick on more. Good, so if you want to do the before and after, you can just hang, feel like that, and then bring your ribs in towards your body, wrap the outer edge of your armpit so that you can hold the head of your humerus, your upper arm bone in place. And notice how that may change the experience in your tissues. Okay, now let's add on to that. Let's bring our elbows to the back of your chair, tabletop, or counter. So depending on your chair, hopefully there's room for your tables. You can also do this on the hands and knees with a stool. Now you can put the hands together, you can have the hands a little bit wider apart, you can put a block between the hands. There's a lot of really fun variations that you can do. But for the first phase, you can have the palms together. Let's do it before and after. If you just let yourself hang, notice how that feels. You might get a stretchy feeling, but that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for building support, awareness, and love around the shoulder joint. So let's move forward a little bit, palms together. Think about pressing your elbows gently into the top of that chair or countertop. Externally rotate your upper arm slightly by wrapping the outer edge of your armpit around. If you have the tendency to let your ribs drop, you'll bring your ribs in towards your body. Now hold those pieces together and slowly walk back without losing that feeling of wrapping your outer edge of your armpit around. Now we're going to add a little movement. We're going to start to bend the elbows. And bending your elbows, bringing the hands back, bringing the hands away from you. But the key with this movement is that you are not losing the work around your shoulder joint. So especially if you were really mobile in those shoulders, you might have to work a lot harder now to hold the engagement around the shoulder joint. But this is huge, because if you want to do things like chaturanga, handstands, stronger things in yoga and everyday life, it's this kind of small little work that's going to add up to really good benefits when you attempt the bigger things. Okay. Now, come up a little bit and don't lose. I know the arms are probably feeling it. Keep wrapping around. We're going to come forward and we're going to come back. And then forward and back. And you decide how much body weight you want here. The harder it's going to be harder, the more plank-like it becomes. But so you just decide which works for you. Keep pressing down through the forearms, wrapping, and there you go. So by doing the variations where we are moving the forearms, where we hold the forearms still and move the shoulders, are great prerequisite or really great building blocks to continue to build that support around the shoulder joint so that we can really get our chaturangas on board. So again, whether you do a chaturanga or not, it's these setup movements, these prerequisite type movements that are going to make a big difference. Because now that you know the work of armpits of power, that work of how to engage and wake up that containers of support around your shoulder joint, recruit the bigger muscles on your back to help hold that, you get the shoulder blade movement and stability, all those pieces, then you can apply that into chaturanga very easily. Now let's bring some of those prerequisite movements that we did standing up down onto the ground and into chaturanga a little bit more. From the hands and knees here, let's go back into those scapula push-ups or the rhomboid push-ups, hands about shoulder width apart. And let's do the before and after first. Let's let the shoulder blades just get lazy and hang. Notice how your ribs will probably drop down. Invite your ribs up, push the floor away from you, and like magic, your shoulder blades may move a little bit more apart. Let's do the circles here. So squeezing the shoulder blades nice and together, down the back and around. And as best you can as you do this, see if you can really feel how the shoulder blades glide around your back. Let's go the other way. And noticing how by not letting the elbows bend to help us out, we're able to get more help, more movement into the shoulder blades. Okay. Now from here, let's go into that wide position with the shoulder blades by pressing the floor away from you. And sometimes people will hear the cue widen the shoulder blades or protract the shoulder blades. And what they'll often do is make it really dramatic and over the top. And we don't really need that. What we're looking for is a way to keep the shoulder blades, and especially the medial border, the inner border of the scapula, flat on the back. So for most of us, it's enough to get them wide. Not wide, but wide enough, as long as it's not floppy shoulder blades together. And then from there, as you continue to press the hands away from the floor, do that elbow bend out. So bring your elbows out to the side, gently straighten them as you rotate them in towards each other. I'll show that from the front for us to see so that it makes a little bit more sense for you. Out to the side, and then I bring my elbows towards each other, try to straighten the arms as I do so, and then immediately things kick on pretty good. And there's your armpits of power. Can we get a sense that the head of the humerus is in a really supportive place and all the muscles, all the surrounding tissues are working? And I'm not just talking about the shoulders, the muscles around the shoulders, but I'm talking about muscles like serratus anterior here, our latissimus dorsi, these really beautiful muscles along the back that help support your shoulder. Now, as I'm talking, I hope you're still holding this, and I hope that you're noticing that for many of us, this will start to feel tiring because we may not be used to holding ourselves upright, even in a tabletop position, with this type of work around the shoulders. So that's good. Now, if you need a break at any point, you can take a break, but we're going to add on. Let's challenge ourselves a little bit and see how much we can hold these armpits of power in a plank position. So let's come into a plank. And while you're in the plank, and I invite you to the best of your ability to hold the plank without losing. So I'm going to come out of it so I can talk to you, but I'd like you to hold that plank if it feels okay for you. Because the longer you hold it, the more you're going to get fatigued. And what I want us to see, when we get fatigued, you're going to notice what's going to give first. And that's going to really be insightful for you when you go and do your chaturangas. And if you teach yoga, how you'll be able to see those same patterns in the people that you teach. So I hope you're still holding it, maybe getting a little bit shaky now. But you're going to feel those shoulder blades here. Maybe you're going to have a harder time staying in that wide position. You might be noticing that the outer edge of your armpit is having a harder time staying in that wrapping, holding position. So come out of it by now, unless you're having so much fun, then you can stay in it. But take a few moments and notice the difference. Notice how much more work your shoulders might have had to do, the arms, the back to hold you like that. Now imagine that work in a plank or tabletop and then lowering your whole body down without losing much of that. It's hard. So that's why it's important to pull back on these movements, to deconstruct some of the main keys of what we'll need in a really big position and big pose that Chaturanga really is. So I encourage you, especially as teachers, I encourage you to know these deconstructed movements, the ones that we did on the chair, at the wall, even on the hands and knees. Do this for a while, because then to try to integrate this into Chaturanga itself is pretty challenging. And this video isn't going to demonstrate or illustrate how to do that specifically in Chaturanga, because that's a whole nother ball of wax. But this is more about deconstructing what to do if you never do Chaturanga but still want upper body strength. What to do so that you can have sustainable shoulders for hopefully as long as you can. And it comes down to what I like to call, and you're welcome to say it as well, armpits of power. Building that container of strength around the glenohumeral joint so that not only if you want to do a Chaturanga, if you want to do a plank well, if you want to lift a laundry basket, if you want to lift a kid and carry that baby up and down stairs, that we have functional strength that will then allow us to do the things that we love in our life easier. And at the heart of this, knowing how to deconstruct big movements like Chaturanga, knowing how to support your shoulders, move with love in your body. That's the key. Learning more, staying open, learning these movement ABCs, and then try bringing them into different movements. So thank you for tuning in with me. I'm Bree Johnson of Heart and Bones Yoga, and I have a little bit of homework before we leave each other. Try to, of course, take everything that we've learned, and if you want to then apply it into your Chaturanga, try it. See, play around with different things. It's nice not to have hard and fast rules about the way we move. I've given you some ideas. I've given you some things to think about, some different ways of holding yourself. So your homework is to put that information into practice in a variety of ways. Next time you pick up a heavy laundry basket, can you do it with armpits of power? What about when you're riding your bike? Do you go into that default of shoulders squeezed or shoulders slumped? And can you armpits of power? Can you work on just holding that shoulder in a good healthy joint, in a healthy position? So try it. See how it feels. Ask more questions, learn more about your body. We are amazing. So I really thank you for taking the time and doing this with me.